Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm one of the founders of Niner Bikes. Steve Domahidi, who isn't here unfortunately, is the other founder. But just wanted to say hi and introduce ourselves and our company to you and what we're all about. We specialize in 29-inch mountain bike wheeled bicycles, and that's all we do. We spend all of our time developing and testing and trying to build the best bike we possibly can for you guys to ride and have a good time out there. Um,
Why 29-inch wheels?
well, We feel that the 29-inch wheel has a number of advantages when it comes to mountain biking. The larger wheels are easier, roll over rocks and uneven terrain a lot easier. With the larger wheel, you have a larger contact patch, which thus reduces the rolling resistance of the wheel. So you actually can climb faster and longer with a 29-inch wheel with less effort than you can with a 26-inch wheel. There are those that say that the 29-inch wheel weighs a little bit more, but the rolling resistance actually is such a large advantage that it overcomes the small weight differential between the two weight sizes. Also, as far as handling, when you're cornering, you also have a larger contact patch because the wheel is bigger. You have more rubber on the ground. Also, there's a subtle design geometry issue in that because the wheels are larger, but you're actually standing lower between the two axles because the bottom bracket height doesn't change on a 29-inch wheel bike. It's still between 12 and 13 inches off the ground, but the axles have been raised. You're actually lower than you are below the axle. So when you're cornering, you'll feel you have much better bite in the corners because your center of gravity is technically lower within the bike. It gives you a much more seated, planted in the bike feeling than some 26-inch bikes where a lot of people feel like they're on top of the bike. So there's just some not comfort issues, but confidence issues that come into play with 29-inch wheel bikes that people, when they get on them, just feel immediately at ease with the bike when they're going downhill. And one of the things that most people comment on is how much faster they are going downhill. And
I was gonna say it just seems like it would be a real natural downhill bike.
Yes, I think for just again for any type of terrain where you're rolling down uneven surfaces or the terrain's tricky to get over, that 29-inch wheel excels huge, and also just again lower rolling resistance climbing is a huge advantage as well. So.
Tell us a little bit about the design ideas. Where do these come from? These are kind of neat bikes that we're going to get to see here in a few minutes.
Yeah, well, Steve and I started, our first bike was a single speed, and we basically started with a clean sheet of paper and thought, what's the best way to make a 29-inch in single speed? What's the best material available? What's the best geometry? What are the best traits? What do we like and dislike about other single speeds that we've ridden? And we kind of took all those things and distilled them down to what's called the 1.9, the bike, our first bike that we produced. And that bike has actually gone through 3 or 4 revisions and changes since we went into production in '04. But basically, all the bikes start out with an idea. We think, hey, this would be a great bike if we could make it, and then we basically boot up the computer and start designing in CAD. And we use our knowledge of riding hundreds and hundreds of bikes over the years. Steve and I are just big bike geeks, and over the years we've sort of been the pair in our group ride known to always show up with new bikes and the newest parts, and we're always trying stuff out. So I think it gives us a really good base of knowledge of what works and what doesn't work, especially with bike geometry. We would always discuss how this bike felt and how this bike felt, and what changes were being made were affecting those bike feels. And Steve actually designed frames for another company before we started together at Niner, so he had a wealth of knowledge actually building and testing prototypes, and my knowledge just comes from trying a new bike every 2 months basically. But yeah, products are basically born in the computer, and prototypes are built, and then we get those samples and we ride them around and feel if what we thought on paper was true, and sometimes it comes out right and sometimes it doesn't. We do a lot of little finessing with the angles. We'll adjust head angles by a quarter degree, drop bottom brackets by a couple of millimeters, change chain stays around, and try to see what works as a good mix. And we have to keep in mind, riders that are going to buy the bike are now worldwide. We have bikes being distributed in Israel and the Philippines, South Korea, Czechoslovakia, so as well as all over the United States. So there's a number of different terrain that people are going to be riding the bikes in, so we have to find a happy medium where we feel the bike's going to perform in a number of different areas. But we think we've reached some of those design goals in some of the very nice reviews that we've gotten from quite a few of the magazines. We were actually voted one of our bikes got Bike of the Year from one of the very prestigious bike magazines.
So, what part does materials play when you're making a frame?
Materials are very important. When you talk about hardtails, there are aluminum, steel, titanium, carbon are the four major materials that you can produce a bike from. Each of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. When it comes to say a steel bike, we feel that A53 Reynolds steel A53 still has some of the best properties as far as hardness, tensile strength, and as far as being suitable to build a bike out of. One of the best materials to make it out of. It's extremely expensive frame material to work with because the tubes are actually produced in Germany, then they have to be shipped to our other factory and welded and painted and then shipped back to us again. So the process, it adds a lot of cost to the process, and we could probably just switch to another cheaper tubing and lower our costs and get a bike out there that, maybe on an overall basis would be just a little bit less than the A53 tubing. But, Steve and I's feeling is that, hey, we're just going to make this bike. We don't make that much money at it, and that's just the way it's going to be, because we just feel that's the best bike that we can produce. And then other materials, as long as they're used properly, people talk about titanium and carbon and aluminum, and that you could make any one of them ride the same, which, theoretically is true, but realistically isn't. You could make an aluminum bike ride like a Thai bike, but it wouldn't last very long because the tubes would have to be so thin they wouldn't hold up to any type of trail abuse. So that's sort of a misnomer and something that people say, but they really can't back it up in real world life. So I kind of chuckle when I see that response pop up on a message board. But I feel for each bike and each rider, there are different things that people are looking for. When you're looking at a bike out of aluminum, aluminum is a very inexpensive material to work with. It has fantastic properties to it, and you can make a very well handling bike out of aluminum, but you won't. But steel is a different animal. Steel has this magic feel that just is really hard to duplicate, and it's really hard to communicate to somebody who hasn't ridden a steel bike, because I tell people all the time, if you ride a steel bike, you'll just feel the magic. And their first thing is, but it's almost a pound heavier. And I go, well, once you ride it, you're going to forget that pound isn't going to be a bothersome fact pretty quickly. And that always holds true. People that get the bike are just like, wow, that was the sickest ride I ever had. It was amazing. And to us, that's what it's all about, because you can design a bike great, but at the end of the day, when you get on the bike and you ride and you have a great experience, that's what we build when we mountain bike. We aren't, of course you're getting fit and blah blah blah, but you're building memories you will remember, times you spend with your friends, beautiful things that you've seen, animals and stuff like that, and experiences that you get on a mountain bike that other people just don't share. And our philosophy is to make sure when you go out and have that ride that you get this magical feeling when you come back and say, wow, that was just an amazing ride, that our bike contributed to that magic.
Cool. Can we go see some of your bikes now?
Yeah, let's go.